On the banks of the Yukon River, Andy encountered a problem. The solar panel malfunctioned. He checked the controller, which displayed a jumble of errors. After restarting the device, the issue was resolved. Due to heavy wood consumption in winter, Andy needs to replenish his wood supply periodically. Deciding to give his sled dogs a day off, he set out on his snowmobile, which is faster than a dog sled, but broke down just over a kilometer from home. Andy, feeling the problem was serious, vented his frustration by hitting the machine. With no other option, he laboriously loaded the snowmobile onto a sled and walked home. He then picked 10 sled dogs, harnessed them, and the team set off, unaware of what awaited them. They sprinted to the snowmobile, where Andy attached the ropes, and at his command, the sled team set off again. Despite the extra weight, the dogs handled it easily, maintaining their speed and quickly getting home. Andy stored the snowmobile back in the garage and then resumed his unfinished wood-chopping task. Upon reaching the forest, he started his chainsaw and began the strenuous work. Chopping wood is a great way to relieve stress, and he could cut through a log with just a few strikes. He ended the day's work with a large tree. Although the wood was heavy, the dogs, working together and relying on momentum, began their journey home. Meanwhile, Sue at the weather station encountered new troubles. Wolves have appeared outside her camp, and Sue does not like wolves, though she is fond of foxes. Over the years, she has adopted several foxes that usually follow her everywhere. One of these adorable foxes even watches TV with her. Sue is very affectionate towards these little creatures. However, one day, a terrifying incident occurred. A bear broke into the fox den. The small fox desperately tugged at her pant leg, seeking her help. But Sue could not overpower the bear and felt helpless. Only the small fox survived, leaving Sue extremely distraught. She regrets her previous hesitance, and now, with wolves lingering outside her camp, she knows she must show strength. Through her binoculars, she spots a wolf, a scout of the pack, testing her reaction. A typical predatory behavior. If they detect weakness, the wolves will attack under cover of night. Sue fires her gun. Hitting the wolf is not as important as showing the pack that she is still the formidable Sue, who will not be easily challenged. In the Arctic Circle in Alaska, both hunters and wolves are natural predators, often matching wits. Today, with sunny weather, Eric plans to check his traps in the Brooks Range. Setting traps in winter is a good way to increase income. Recently, after spotting wolverine tracks in the snow, he set several traps near a creek tailored for catching wolverines, whose fur is highly valuable. Once, he earned $500 from a single pelt. He placed a deer head as bait on the wolverine's trail and, filled with anticipation, returns to find fresh animal tracks and the deer head gone. Not the work of a wolverine, but of a wolf. Known for their cunning, wolves can recognize traps. This one had dragged the deer head to the river to feast. Facing such a clever adversary excites Eric because he enjoys challenges. Returning to the site, he observes that the wolf indeed stepped on the trap, but dodged the fatal blow. Eric resets the trap, covers it with snow, and decides to set more traps, knowing wolves roam widely. Given their acute sense of smell and natural suspicion, Eric decides to boil the traps to remove any human scent. Spruce branches are excellent for covering up human odors perfectly. While waiting for the water to boil, Eric takes out a small knife and starts deboning the lynx's head. After working for a while, the fire is ready. He steps outside, lifts the pot lid, and uses a stick to lift all the traps out, hanging them on a tree to dry naturally. He avoids touching them directly with his hands to prevent leaving any scent. Now, he can go back inside to sleep. At dawn the next day, Eric prepares several animal skins, bones, hooves, and a deer head as bait. He loads them onto his snowmobile and sets off. He respects wolves as awe-inspiring creatures, but to maintain ecological balance, their numbers must be controlled. Unfortunately, the snow isn't thick enough for setting traps effectively, but he still sets up various traps at different locations, including leg-hold traps and noose traps. He also scatters some skins and bones in the bushes to lure wolves by scent. If it's a pack, they would likely spot the traps and avoid them, but a lone wolf, even recognizing the danger, might still take the risk. Once a wolf makes a mistake, it can't escape. Eric is confident about his network of traps. He returns to where he first saw the wolf tracks, places a trap under that tree, and ties the chain to the tree. He uses a deer bone as bait, then chops down some spruce branches to create a tunnel. This forces any approaching animal to come through there. He covers the entire setup with snow. After some thought, he adds more chunks of meat to enhance the lure's appeal. After everything was set up, Eric returned home to wait for his prey. A few days later, he went to check the traps, hoping to catch the wolf. As soon as he entered the creek area, he spotted wolf tracks leading towards the traps, which excited him, anticipating a surprise just ahead. He hurried to the first trap only to find it empty, and worse, the ice was collapsing, a bad sign indicating water levels might destroy his traps. He moved on to the second location, where he found several footprints and wolf droppings on the snow, heightening the tension. He approached slowly, but found the trap undisturbed and the bait missing. It turned out the wolf had cleverly circumvented the tunnel from the back. This cunning creature had not only stolen the bait, but also left its droppings as a provocation. This challenge brought a smile to the usually invincible Eric. He began to respect his adversary. Catching a wolf was indeed no simple task. He reset the traps, ready for the next round of the challenge. The Hailstone family is preparing for a family hunting trip. Due to fewer game animals this year, rabbits and other small creatures are particularly important. Chip has raised several beautiful daughters. Once they are dressed and have taken out the fishing nets to be used for catching rabbits, they load them onto the sled. These nets are tools for trapping rabbits. If they are lucky, they can catch up to 100 rabbits in one day. To stay warm, they bring some animal skins, as there is not enough space on the snowmobile. They have to sit on the sled, and despite the harsh conditions, they set off in high spirits. They cross the frozen river and head into the nearby bushes, home to the wild rabbits. Seeing rabbit tracks everywhere in the snow excites the young girls. They take out the fishing nets and set them up along the edge of the bushes. The older sister teaches the younger one the techniques for catching rabbits, which involve driving the rabbits toward the nets where they get caught in their panic. The girls can hardly contain their excitement and dive into the activity. Chip and his son lead the charge, driving the rabbits while shouting and constantly hitting with sticks. Seeing many rabbit tracks in the snow, they work even harder. The young girls wait by the nets, ready to strike if a rabbit gets caught. Unfortunately, after a busy day, they don't see a single rabbit and have to pack up the nets to try again the next morning. As a new round of the sun rises, they set off again, still in high spirits despite yesterday's failure. After setting up the nets, they begin to work together. The adults enter the bushes, making noise and driving the rabbits, while the young girls quietly sit by the nets, waiting for the rabbits to arrive, smiling happily. Now, as the adults approach the nets, increasing the noise, it's almost time to witness a miracle. The young girls look sad, the initial excitement gone, as not even one rabbit is seen. It turns out to be a false hope, but the adults are not surprised as hunting does not always yield results. Returning empty-handed is common, such is the life of a hunter. At the Kavik River camp, while Sue was undergoing surgery last year, someone stole her stored fuel. To ensure she could make it through the winter, she searched everywhere for fuel and finally contacted a company that would deliver thousands of liters by plane. To ensure a smooth landing, she needed to clear the runway. Fortunately, with various vehicles available, clearing the road wasn't difficult. After some busy work, she managed to clear the path, but suddenly the wind picked up and in just 5 minutes, the runway was covered with snow again. Today's efforts were in vain since the plane was due to arrive tomorrow. Sue decided she would clear the runway again the next day. The next day, she contacted the fuel company to check on the flight status, only to receive bad news. There was a small crack in the plane's tail, and they were hurriedly repairing it, but it would not be able to take off today. Sue's face fell as she only had enough fuel for 4 more days, and the weather forecast predicted a severe blizzard in 2 to 3 days. If the fuel didn't arrive before then, Sue would face a deadly situation. The following day, she contacted the company again, but they said the plane was still under repair and couldn't confirm a departure time. Time was running out. Another day passed, and the wind outside had noticeably strengthened. Sue couldn't wait any longer. In a frantic call, she finally received good news that the plane was expected to arrive by 3 p.m. She loaded the last of her fuel onto the snowplow and began clearing the runway. This was her last chance. More than 10 minutes past the scheduled time had passed, but there was no sign of the plane. Sue strained her eyes and finally saw the plane appear in the gray sky. Unfortunately, the pilot couldn't see the runway clearly and hesitated to land. Using her radio, Sue continuously directed him, and after 3 attempts, the pilot finally found the position and landed safely. Sue was uncontrollably excited and thanked the pilot for saving her life. On the banks of the Yukon River, Andy earns his living by dog sledding. The dogs are important members of his family. A young pup named Jack, 6 months old and yet to experience romance, is considered of noble breed and is being groomed to be the next lead dog. Andy and his wife, being elderly, have decided that Jack will be the last dog they raise. They currently have 25 sled dogs, with old Remington, the present leader who is 15 and ready to retire. Today's training involves Jack running with the dog team to get used to the team's rhythm. Kate puts a collar on him and takes him out first. Then Andy follows with the team, catching up to Kate, allowing Jack to run behind. If Jack performs well, he will receive a reward. This way, Jack will learn to obey. During the early stages of training, expectations for the young dog shouldn't be too high to avoid making him nervous or potentially causing him to flee the team. In the dog team, each dog plays a different role, with the lead dog being crucial. Currently, Andy's team has only one lead dog, and he has high hopes for Jack. So far, Jack has been doing well, keeping up at the back of the pack. However, being a single dog, he sometimes gets restless. Suddenly, he rushes to the front of the team wanting to interact with the other dogs, which causes Andy to reprimand him sharply. Fortunately, no accidents occur. Stopping during the run could lead to chaos in the team. Clearly frightened, Jack ends his training for the day. Andy picks up Jack, comforting him with the words, "You're going to be a great dog," as they head home to build him a doghouse, marking Jack's upcoming possession of his own space. Andy sketches out a design on a piece of plywood. The puppy is a beloved member of their family, and their attachment is deep. Kate feels a bit melancholic, reminiscing about Jack's puppy days. Now that he's grown and about to move into his own doghouse, it feels as though a child is leaving home, which is bittersweet. She makes a nameplate for Jack, pouring all her emotions into those few strokes. Andy completes the construction of the doghouse. Jack, now wearing his collar, begins the most significant chapter of his dog life. The couple, continuing their ancestors' steps, plans to hunt reindeer during the harsh winter. They start from Norvik, heading to northern Alaska Peninsula. Along the way, they plan to camp and, crossing the peninsula, hunt seals around Dillingham and the refuge cabins, entering wild animal territory. Hunting is a multi-day effort, often taking a week, requiring thorough preparation. They made sleeping bags from reindeer skins for warmth. A week before the hunt, they meticulously checked their equipment to avoid malfunctions. Besides snowmobile maintenance, firearm inspection was crucial. Chip set up a target to calibrate a new sniper rifle for Agnes, as traditionally, hunting is seen as a man's job. However, the Hailstone family is unique. With Chip's criminal record, he is restricted to traditional black powder weapons, inadequate for large game. Thus, Agnes handles the shooting. Fortunately, Agnes is an exceptional shot, ensuring their survival. Through practice, she becomes proficient with the rifle, achieving almost perfect accuracy. As night falls, they return home to rest, preparing for the journey the next day. The couple loads their snowmobile, especially with fuel since there are no refueling stations in the wilderness. They must carry enough fuel to return home if necessary. Agnes, confident and eager for the hunt, looks forward to both the hunt and a rare honeymoon adventure. Despite her tough exterior, she retains a youthful heart. With the engine roaring, they set off, marking a dark day for their prey, which hardly escapes their pursuit. They revel in the wilderness, enjoying nature's charm. 2 hours later, as darkness sets, they feel tired but have no time to rest and quickly set up their tent, a conical structure easy to assemble. They push the sled inside to use as a bed, cover it with waterproof fabric, and lay a thick bison skin on top for comfort. Finally, they pull out the reindeer skin sleeping bags prepared by Agnes. Chip secures the tent edges with snow to block the wind, and Agnes lights a candle and makes coffee. After their drink, they fall asleep, warm and cozy inside the tent, despite the icy conditions outside. The next day, they continued their journey, aiming to reach the hunting cabin before dark. This cabin held many childhood memories for Agnes, where her father often took her hunting and told her many interesting stories. They moved quickly, but Agnes soon smelled something odd. It was gasoline leaking. They stopped to inspect and found a crack in the fuel drum, with gasoline slowly seeping out. Gasoline was crucial here. Without it, they would be stranded in the wilderness. With no immediate solution, they pressed on towards their destination. However, trouble struck soon after. Their snowmobile got stuck on a hillside, immobilized by the heavy fuel drum. This setback frustrated them. Chip loosened the screws connecting the sled, replaced them with a longer rope to free the snowmobile first. Despite the flurry of snow as he started the engine, the vehicle didn't budge. With his wife pulling from the front and their combined efforts, they eventually freed the snowmobile and then pulled the sled with the fuel drum out of the ditch. After a brief rest, they continued and made it to the hunting cabin just before nightfall. They siphoned off some gasoline to keep it below the crack, losing over 10 liters in the process, which was distressing. Inside the cabin, shared property among hunters, everyone recorded their arrival time, travel plans, and routes to prevent getting lost and to facilitate rescue if needed. The next day, traveling light, they headed straight for the reindeer gathering area. Groups of North American reindeer basked in the sun, grazing on moss, living leisurely lives. These reindeer also attracted various predators. Chip noticed crows circling above, a sign that wolves might be nearby, the cunning predators hidden close by. As the reindeer herd slowly moved west, the couple was on the opposite side of the ridge, directly in the path of the moving herd. With some time left, they decided to scout the area. Reindeer were an essential part of their lives, relied on for meat, both for personal consumption and trade. Agnes used binoculars to spot the advance group of reindeer to the right, signaling the start of their hunt. For stealth, they wore white clothes with dark accents on their heads and feet, blending in from a distance like reindeer, confusing the herd. Agnes crouched down, adjusting her shooting posture as the herd suddenly started running, kicking up snow. She silently aimed and took a fleeting shot but missed. Quickly firing again, she still missed. As it seemed they had no more chances, suddenly one reindeer stopped. Chip urgently signaled her, and Agnes shot again but shot high, missing as the reindeer vanished from sight. After 3 shots, and no success, Agnes felt disappointed. They had dressed to mimic reindeer, hoping to be mistaken for peers by the herd. However, the experienced lead reindeer quickly saw through their disguise and led the herd away, ending their hunting for the day. They returned to the hunting cabin. The next morning, they got up early, had breakfast, and warmed up with a cup of coffee before putting on their clothes and setting out to hunt again. This area on the western side of the Arctic is a wintering ground for reindeer, hosting about 320,000 strong animals and serving as a historic hunting ground. Today, they plan to head to nearby mountains where they expected to see around 1,000 reindeer, densely packed like peppercorns scattered across the ground. Confident of success, they rode their snowmobile and soon reached their destination. Through binoculars, they observed both galloping and quietly foraging reindeer. Seeing several groups of reindeer fleeing, Chip deduced that other predators, possibly wolves, were also present. After observing for a while, they decided to head to the top of the mountain, which offered rock formations as cover and provided a wide view, making it an ideal ambush spot. The reindeer were expected to pass through here, and today's camouflage made them indistinguishable from the rocks. They spotted a lone doe slowly moving through the snow, appearing as an easy target. However, the herd seemed spooked and began to run faster, causing some reindeer to fall behind. Agnes took aim and fired, but the startled reindeer scattered as the shot rang out, and she missed. Reloading quickly, she fired a second shot at the running reindeer, but the distance was too great, and the frightened animal ran even faster. Moving targets proved difficult to aim at, but Agnes remained calm and fired a third shot. One reindeer slowly fell, hit not in the heart as intended but in the spine, leaving it still alive. This did not align with humane hunting practices. Seeing the reindeer in pain, Chip drove up, quickly ended its suffering with a knife, and while the body was still warm, he swiftly cut open the belly, removed the innards, and then skinned the reindeer. The quality of the deerskin this season was mediocre, so he left the skin and innards as bait to attract crows, which in turn would lure other predators. In this ecological chain of predation, Chip planned to be the ultimate hunter. The next day, with temperatures dropping and visibility low, they returned to the previous day's hunting spot to check the bait. Hiding near the rocks, they observed through binoculars, but so far, only a few crows were seen feasting on the reindeer's innards, and no other predators had shown up. They decided to head home and return the next day, as the weather was worsening and the wind was picking up. At home, Agnes cut some deer meat to prepare a delicious meal for her husband. Besides the meat, she added corn and carrots and simmered it over high heat. Despite the howling winds outside, it was warm inside their home. They enjoyed their meal while dreaming of the future, hoping for better weather to hunt more reindeer and possibly even a wolf. This simple and genuine lifestyle is typical of the Inuit people. In the trap, a wolverine was desperately struggling. It is a distant relative of the honey badger, but even more ferocious. However, today, it met a more formidable hunter. Eric pulled out his pistol and fired 2 shots at the wolverine, ending its life. Capturing the wolverine left Eric feeling conflicted because, a few days earlier, he had set traps for wolves that ended up outsmarting him. They ate the bait and left only feces behind. Eric felt outplayed by the wolves, yet he had unexpectedly caught a wolverine. Wolverines are very rare, and the one he caught was a male with beautiful fur. Wolverine pelts are valuable and popular among customers. Eric decided to contact a buyer. He called a gentleman, a friend of a regular client, who was interested in both the wolverine's pelt and skull. They quickly made a deal. Eric would process the wolverine and ship it. Now, having boiled the skull for a long time, Eric took it out to thoroughly clean out the impurities. If the boredom of a job could be rated on a scale of 10, Eric thought skull cleaning would definitely be at the bottom. It was utterly joyless. The next day, Eric packed the dried wolverine pelt into a cardboard box and carefully wrapped the skull. He planned to send the package first to a tannery in Anchorage, Alaska, which specialized in tanning animal skins, and then to a renowned taxidermist for further processing before shipping it to the client by freighter. Since trips to town were not easy, Eric also took several fox and lynx pelts from his home storage. Although he mostly sold directly to clients and taxidermists, he occasionally sold to fur traders as well. Soon after, he drove to town and went straight to Bill's Raw Fur Company. Bill was generous, often paying young hunters a high price, which made him popular among them. Bill was busy but welcomed Eric's arrival, putting aside his work. He carefully inspected the pelts, noting details like the paws, ears, and lips that are turned inside out for tanning. Bill praised the quality, but pointed out a minor flaw and shared some processing tips. He then priced each fox pelt at $60, well above the market rate for the lynx pelts as well, which delighted Eric. With a good mood, he started his journey back home, content with a successful trip. The next day, Eric went to a nearby river area where he found wolf tracks. He has a particular fondness for wolves and never wants to miss an opportunity to encounter them. He planned to set a series of wolf traps along the river. These snares are designed to catch prey up to 300 pounds. If a moose accidentally falls into one, it can escape, which also helps protect the moose's life. Eric tied the snare to a tree about 40 centimeters off the ground. If a wolf passed by, it would get caught by the neck and ultimately suffocate. After setting the trap, he took off the sled to cross to the other side of the creek to check the area. He sped up, but accidents happen unexpectedly. While climbing a slope, he hit a bush, lost his balance, and fell heavily. Fortunately, he was not injured, but his snowmobile was severely damaged. The control and brake systems were affected, and even the handlebar was bent. It seemed his hunting for the day had to be paused. He returned home dejectedly and only arrived back as night fell. Upon re-examining the snowmobile, he confirmed it was severely damaged and beyond his ability to repair alone. The next day, he drove to Fairbanks, primarily to get the snowmobile repaired. The mechanic carefully checked it and confirmed the serious issues, deciding to prioritize the repairs since it was an essential tool for a hunter. However, the repairs would take several days, during which time he could not go hunting. At the Kavik River camp, the fuel Sue needed was delivered by plane. They transferred the fuel into bags, enough to last the camp until spring. After saying goodbye to the pilot, Sue had to transfer the gasoline from the bags into other containers. She used a pump to transfer the gasoline into various containers for storage. It was completely dark by the time she finished transferring the gasoline. Next, she needed to start the generator, which had stopped working a few days earlier due to a lack of fuel. After refueling and flipping the switch, the generator roared to life, and the lights turned on. Sue let out an excited howl, relieved to have overcome the challenge. The next day, Sue craved something special to celebrate. She set her sights on the delicious ptarmigan, a bird with tender meat and excellent taste, a rare delicacy in Alaska. However, their snow-white plumage made them well camouflaged and hard to spot. Sue also had to be cautious of wolves, wolverines, lynxes, and other wild animals in the area. She followed the tracks left by the ptarmigan in the snow and eventually spotted a few. They blended seamlessly with the snow and ice. Sue approached quietly, trying not to disturb them, but she accidentally scared one and caused a chain reaction, making all the ptarmigan fly away. She could only watch as they disappeared. The next day, as snowflakes fell from the sky, Sue, undeterred, still wanted to catch some ptarmigan. She had worn black clothes the previous day, which made her too visible, so she switched to light-colored clothing to blend in better with her surroundings. She hid behind a willow tree, watching the ptarmigan's center of activity. When she felt confident, she crawled on her knees to avoid startling them. This strategy proved effective, and she got closer without the ptarmigan noticing. Sue aimed and fired her first shot, but unfortunately, she missed and the ptarmigan all flew away. Her continuous failures did not dampen her enthusiasm. In the afternoon, she went out hunting again, still targeting the ptarmigan. Learning from her previous attempts, she approached carefully and waited for the right moment to shoot. Unfortunately, she missed again, but Sue did not give up and fired another shot. The ptarmigan narrowly escaped. They were only about 40 meters away, and surprisingly, they had not flown away. Sue, feeling suddenly inspired, raised her gun and shot again. This time, she finally hit her target. Persistence had paid off. To avoid bringing the scent of blood back to camp, Sue butchered the ptarmigan on the spot, taking only the edible parts with her. Back at the cabin, she started cooking. She removed the bones from the ptarmigan, keeping only the breast meat. She couldn't miss out on the ptarmigan's heart either. Then she lit the stove, waited for the skillet to heat up, and added a generous spoonful of butter. She prepared some apple slices and added them with cranberries to the skillet, sautéing them until flavorful before adding the ptarmigan meat. The aroma quickly filled the air. Dinner was ready, and it was delicious. Sue happily enjoyed her meal. On the banks of the Yukon River, Andy set out to chop wood because the cold weather meant burning a lot of wood daily. Although the snowmobile was a reliable mode of transportation, accidents happened frequently. Today, he fell again. Muttering curses, Andy picked himself up and struggled to right the snowmobile before continuing on his way. He soon arrived at the forest where he started his chainsaw and began to cut down trees. The chainsaw was highly efficient. He only needed to cut a notch at the base of the tree, step back to a safe distance, and watch the tall spruce thunderously fall. He used the same method for another large tree, creating a spectacular scene. Andy cut the tree trunks into sections and tied them to the sled to transport back home. To increase efficiency, he enlisted his wife's help. Dressed appropriately, the couple drove back into the woods. They first attached a cable to the large trees, using the tightened rope to control the direction of the fall. Once everything was set, Andy chopped the trees while his wife cheered him on. Their coordination was seamless, and the trees fell in the intended direction, exciting them both. Next, they needed to transport the wood home, but the area was littered with stumps, causing the snowmobile to frequently get stuck. An irritable Andy lost his temper, looking quite fearsome. Kate remained silent, waiting for him to calm down. After some time, they finally managed to transport the wood home. Once the task was completed, the couple planned to head to a cabin by the Takini River for a short vacation, since today was Kate's birthday. Andy had prepared a special gift for her, a necklace meticulously crafted from lynx bones and a pendant, which he had secretly made during his spare time to surprise her. Before long, they arrived at the cabin, a beautiful and romantic spot. Andy got the stove going to warm up the interior, while Kate prepared a delicious dinner. After a hearty meal, Andy stepped outside to take care of the sled dogs, feeding them. When night fell, Andy passionately kissed his wife, and then playfully asked her to scratch his back, leading to the surprise. Kate eagerly opened it to discover the beautiful necklace. She loved her birthday gift, and the loving couple was set to enjoy an unforgettable evening. In the Arctic Circle, the Inuit not only hunt reindeer, but also kill gray wolves. A few days ago, Agnes killed a reindeer and left its entrails and skin behind. hoping to attract wild beasts. Today, the two returned to where the reindeer gather and witnessed a herd stampeding. Agnes sensed danger and quickly used her binoculars to scout the area. The reindeer's stampede usually indicated a predator was chasing them. Sure enough, a young gray wolf was spotted behind the herd, halfway up the hillside and about to cross the peak. The Chip couple had to act immediately. They decided to approach from the side of the ridge to ambush the wolf. It was an intense chase. The once formidable wolf, which boldly preyed on reindeer, now seemed desperate to escape. However, the Chips would not miss such an opportunity. They increased the power and reached the peak on their snowmobile. Using their binoculars again, they saw the wolf suddenly stop, likely because it didn't hear the snowmobile. After a short rest, it continued on its way along a frozen creek. The Chips were cautious and decided not to risk pursuing it there, and reluctantly gave up. They continued to track the wolf's footprints and found a recently killed reindeer. Looking into the distance, Chip spotted the running wolf again. It seemed to be retracing its escape route from the previous day, but the Chips were onto it. They decided to ambush ahead, waiting for the wolf to fall into their trap. Unfortunately, the wolf was also fast and had already escaped the encirclement. Chip followed closely while Agnes aimed her rifle. As the wolf got further away, Agnes had to shoot quickly but missed. She reloaded and fired again, confident she hit the target this time. She hurried over and found the wolf lying in the snow, already dead. They felt a deep sense of accomplishment as they touched its furry coat. The wolf's pelt was of high quality, worth up to $1,500, enough to cover their recent fuel expenses. They moved the slightly frozen wolf onto their snowmobile and joyfully returned home.